Katie Morgan stood at her station on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Horizon, watching the massive alien vessel approach through the viewscreen. The ship looked like nothing humans had ever built, with smooth curves and a blue metallic surface that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. After 3 months of preparation, first contact with the Zephyrian Empire was finally happening. Admiral Jack Turner paced behind her, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Katie had worked under Turner for 5 years, and she had never seen him this nervous. The weight of representing all of humanity in this first meeting was crushing, but Katie felt ready. She had spent every waking hour studying the limited data they had about the Zephyrians, learning their language patterns, and trying to understand their culture. The communication channel crackled to life, and a smooth, melodic voice filled the bridge. "This is Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian merchant vessel Starwind. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade with the people of Earth." Turner stepped forward, straightening his uniform. "Commander Veltar, this is Admiral Jack Turner of the Earth Defense Force. We welcome you to our system and look forward to learning about your people." Katie watched the alien commander appear on the main screen. Veltar was tall and elegant, with blue skin that had a slight metallic sheen, and large silver eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His movements were graceful and calculated, like a dancer who had practiced every gesture 1,000 times. "Your species intrigues us, Admiral Turner," Veltar said, his voice carrying a subtle accent that Katie found strangely hypnotic. "We have traveled far to meet you. Our empire spans many star systems, and we have built strong trade relationships with dozens of species. We believe humanity could benefit greatly from joining our network." Turner nodded eagerly. "We are very interested in learning more about these opportunities, Commander. What kinds of trade arrangements do you have in mind?" Katie frowned slightly. As she studied the data streaming across her console, something about the Zephyrian ship's energy signatures didn't match what she would expect from a merchant vessel. The power output was too high, and there were weapon-like configurations hidden beneath the smooth hull design. She made a mental note to investigate further. "We offer technology, resources, and protection," Veltar continued. "In exchange, we ask for mining rights to certain asteroids in your system and permission to establish small trading posts near your major worlds. These bases would allow us to better serve human needs and respond quickly to any requests for assistance." The proposal sounded generous, almost too generous. Katie had studied enough alien contact scenarios to know that advanced civilizations rarely offered such favorable terms without expecting something significant in return. She began running calculations on her console, mapping out the proposed trading post locations. Her blood ran cold as the pattern became clear. The Zephyrian trading posts would be positioned at strategic points throughout human space, creating a network that could control all major shipping lanes and communications. From these positions, they could monitor every human military movement and civilian transport. It was the perfect setup for either surveillance or invasion. Katie quietly activated a private communication channel to Turner. "Admiral, I need to speak with you privately. There are some serious concerns about their proposal." Turner glanced at her with irritation. "Not now, Morgan. We're in the middle of delicate negotiations." "Sir, the trading post locations there suggesting would give them tactical control over our entire system. This isn't a trade arrangement, it's a military positioning strategy." Turner's jaw tightened. "Lieutenant Commander Morgan, you will return to your duties and allow me to handle the diplomatic aspects of this meeting." Katie felt a surge of frustration. She had been brought on this mission specifically because of her expertise in military strategy and alien psychology. Her job was to identify potential threats, and she was looking at a massive one. "Admiral, with respect, I believe the Zephyrians are not what they claim to be. Their ship's energy signatures suggest military capabilities far beyond what a merchant vessel would need." "That's enough, Morgan." Turner's voice carried a warning that Katie had never heard before. "You're letting paranoia cloud your judgment? The Zephyrians are offering us the chance to join a galactic community. This is the greatest opportunity in human history." Katie realized that Turner had already made up his mind. The political pressure from Earth's leaders to secure this deal was too great. They wanted the advanced technology and protection that the Zephyrians offered, and they weren't going to let military concerns get in the way. But Katie couldn't stay silent. Too many lives were at stake. Admiral, I'm formally recommending that we decline their offer and request more time to study their proposal. The tactical implications are too dangerous to ignore. Turner's face flushed with anger. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, you are relieved of duty. Security, escort her to the detention bay. Katie stared at him in shock. Sir, you can't do this. I'm trying to protect humanity. No, you're trying to sabotage the most important diplomatic mission in human history, Turner snapped. I won't let your fears destroy this opportunity. Two security officers moved toward Katie, their hands resting on their stun weapons. She looked around the bridge, hoping to find support from her fellow officers, but they all avoided her eyes. Everyone knew that questioning Turner during such a crucial moment was career suicide. Admiral, please listen to me, Katie said desperately. The Zephyrians are positioning themselves to control our entire system. This isn't trade, it's conquest. Turner nodded to the security officers. Use the stun setting. She's becoming hysterical. The blue energy beam hit Katie in the chest, and she felt her muscles lock up as electricity coursed through her body. She collapsed to the deck, unable to move or speak, but her mind remained painfully clear. She watched helplessly as Turner turned back to the view screen and Veltara's patient smile. I apologize for the interruption, Commander, Turner said. Some of my officers are having difficulty adjusting to the idea of alien contact. Please, let's continue our discussion. Veltara's silver eyes flickered with what Katie was certain was satisfaction. Of course, Admiral. I understand that change can be frightening for some individuals. Perhaps we should proceed with signing the preliminary agreement. As the security officers dragged Katie's paralyzed body toward the detention bay, she saw Turner reach for the treaty documents that would allow the Zephyrians to establish their bases throughout human space. The last thing she saw before the bridge doors closed was Veltar's smile growing wider, and she knew with absolute certainty that humanity had just made the worst mistake in its history. Katie spent the next few days learning everything she could about the Zephyrian Empire from her fellow prisoners. Each person had a piece of the puzzle, and together they painted a picture of a civilization that had perfected the art of conquest through deception. The more she learned, the more she understood that humanity was facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. Lisa showed her intelligence reports she had managed to hide before her capture. The reports detailed the Zephyrian conquest of the Altarian Republic, a peaceful species that had been known for their advanced medical technology. They offered the Altarians protection from hostile neighbors in exchange for medical research partnerships. Lisa explained, within 6 months, every Altarian world had Zephyrian bases. Within a year, the Altarians were working as medical slaves for the Empire. Alex told her about the Corvin Collective, a warrior species that had been considered unbeatable in combat. The Zephyrians approached them with offers of worthy opponents to fight and new worlds to conquer. The Corvins thought they were getting allies for expansion. Instead, they became the Empire's primary military force, used to conquer other species. Marcus had studied the technical aspects of how the Zephyrians operated. They don't just take over governments, he said. They absorb entire civilizations. They keep each species' unique abilities and technologies, then use them to make the Empire stronger. It's like they're collecting different tools for their toolbox. But it was the other alien prisoners who gave Katie the most disturbing insights. There were 3 Altarians in the prison, survivors of their species' conquest. They were tall, pale beings with large eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness. One of them, who called himself Healer Zent, spoke to Katie about the Zephyrian methods. They study each species for months before revealing their true nature, Zent explained in his soft, musical voice. They learn about our psychology, our fears, our weaknesses. They know exactly how to break us when the time comes. Katie felt a chill as she realized what this meant. They're not just studying our military tactics here. They're learning how to break human spirit. Yes, Zen said sadly. They did the same to us. They learned that Altarians value life above all else, so they used our own people as hostages to force compliance. They will find whatever humans value most and use it against you. The revelation that shook Katie most came from studying the Zephyrian guards themselves. She watched them carefully during the daily food distribution and exercise periods, noting their behavior patterns and responses to different situations. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Zephyrians were incredibly disciplined and efficient, but they were also predictable. They followed precise routines and protocols that never varied. When faced with unexpected situations, they didn't improvise like humans would. Instead, they consulted their superiors or referred to their instruction manuals. They're like a very advanced computer program, Katie explained to her fellow prisoners during one of their secret planning sessions. They're extremely good at following complex instructions, but they struggle with situations that aren't covered in their programming. That's their weakness, Lisa said with growing excitement. They've conquered 17 species, but they've never faced a species that could think completely outside their system. Katie nodded, her mind already working on the implications. Every species they've conquered has had predictable behavioral patterns. Warriors fight in certain ways, intellectuals respond to logic, merchants think about profit. But humans don't fit into neat categories like that. We're chaotic, Alex said with a grin. We do things that don't make sense to anyone else, sometimes not even to ourselves. Marcus pushed his glasses up nervously. But how do we use that against them? We're stuck in a prison with no weapons and no way to communicate with the outside. Katie had been thinking about this problem constantly. The Zephyrians had built this prison to contain beings who thought conventionally, but they hadn't planned for humans who could think in ways that violated their understanding of logical behavior. We don't try to escape in the way they expect, Katie said. We don't try to overpower the guards or hack their systems or find a weakness in the prison design. We do something they can't predict because it doesn't follow any rational pattern. What do you mean? Lisa asked. We get them to let us out voluntarily, Katie said. We make them believe that keeping us here is more dangerous than letting us go. Alex looked skeptical. How exactly do we do that? Katie smiled, and for the first time since arriving on Zarian 7, she felt truly confident. We start acting like the humans they think we are, but we do it in a way that makes them question everything they think they know about human nature. Over the following days, Katie began implementing her plan. She studied the Zephyrian guards more closely, learning their individual personalities and weaknesses. She discovered that while they were collectively disciplined, they were also individually curious about the species they were guarding. She started small conversations with the guards, asking innocent questions about Zephyrian culture and expressing admiration for their technological achievements. The guards, trained to gather information about human psychology, responded by sharing more than they probably should have from these conversations. Katie learned that the Zephyrians saw humans as slightly more unpredictable than most species, but still fundamentally logical beings who would respond to the right combination of pressure and incentives. They believed that human leaders could be bought with technology and that human populations could be controlled through their attachment to their families and communities. They think they understand us, Katie explained to her fellow prisoners. They believe we're just another species that can be cataloged and controlled. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we're pushed to our limits. The breakthrough came when Katie realized that the Zephyrians had a fundamental flaw in their thinking. They had studied human military tactics and psychology, but they had never encountered human creativity under extreme pressure. They understood how humans fought when they had hope, but they had no data on how humans behaved when they had nothing left to lose. We're going to show them something they've never seen before, Katie told her fellow prisoners. We're going to show them what happens when humans stop trying to survive and start trying to win. Katie spent the next few days learning everything she could about the Zephyrian Empire from her fellow prisoners. Each person had a piece of the puzzle, and together they painted a picture of a civilization that had perfected the art of conquest through deception. The more she learned, the more she understood that humanity was facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. Lisa showed her intelligence reports she had managed to hide before her capture. The reports detailed the Zephyrian conquest of the Altarian Republic, a peaceful species that had been known for their advanced medical technology. They offered the Altarians protection from hostile neighbors in exchange for medical research partnerships. Lisa explained, within 6 months every Altarian world had Zephyrian bases. Within a year, the Altarians were working as medical slaves for the Empire. Alex told her about the Korvan Collective, a warrior species that had been considered unbeatable in combat. The Zephyrians approached them with offers of worthy opponents to fight and new worlds to conquer. The Korvans thought they were getting allies for expansion. Instead, they became the Empire's primary military force, used to conquer other species. Marcus had studied the technical aspects of how the Zephyrians operated. They don't just take over governments, he said. They absorb entire civilizations. They keep each species' unique abilities and technologies, then use them to make the Empire stronger. It's like they're collecting different tools for their toolbox. But it was the other alien prisoners who gave Katie the most disturbing insights. There were 3 Altarians in the prison, survivors of their species' conquest. They were tall, pale beings with large eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness. One of them, who called himself Healer Zent, spoke to Katie about the Zephyrian methods. They study each species for months before revealing their true nature, Zent explained in his soft, musical voice. They learn about our psychology, our fears, our weaknesses. They know exactly how to break us when the time comes. Katie felt a chill as she realized what this meant. They're not just studying our military tactics here. They're learning how to break human spirit. Yes, Zent said sadly. They did the same to us. They learned that Altarians value life above all else, so they used our own people as hostages to force compliance. They will find whatever humans value most and use it against you. The revelation that shook Katie most came from studying the Zephyrian guards themselves. She watched them carefully during the daily food distribution and exercise periods, noting their behavior patterns and responses to different situations. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Zephyrians were incredibly disciplined and efficient, but they were also predictable. They followed precise routines and protocols that never varied. When faced with unexpected situations, they didn't improvise like humans would. Instead, they consulted their superiors or referred to their instruction manuals. They're like a very advanced computer program, Katie explained to her fellow prisoners during one of their secret planning sessions. They're extremely good at following complex instructions, but they struggle with situations that aren't covered in their programming. That's their weakness, Lisa said with growing excitement. They've conquered 17 species, but they've never faced a species that could think completely outside their system. Katie nodded, her mind already working on the implications. Every species they've conquered has had predictable behavioral patterns. Warriors fight in certain ways, intellectuals respond to logic, merchants think about profit. But humans don't fit into neat categories like that. We're chaotic, Alex said with a grin. We do things that don't make sense to anyone else, sometimes not even to ourselves. Marcus pushed his glasses up nervously. But how do we use that against them? We're stuck in a prison with no weapons and no way to communicate with the outside. Katie had been thinking about this problem constantly. The Zephyrians had built this prison to contain beings who thought conventionally, but they hadn't planned for humans who could think in ways that violated their understanding of logical behavior. We don't try to escape in the way they expect, Katie said. We don't try to overpower the guards or hack their systems or find a weakness in the prison design. We do something they can't predict because it doesn't follow any rational pattern. What do you mean? Lisa asked. We get them to let us out voluntarily, Katie said. We make them believe that keeping us here is more dangerous than letting us go. Alex looked skeptical. How exactly do we do that? Katie smiled, and for the first time since arriving on Zarian 7, she felt truly confident. We start acting like the humans they think we are, but we do it in a way that makes them question everything they think they know about human nature. Over the following days, Katie began implementing her plan. She studied the Zephyrian guards more closely, learning their individual personalities and weaknesses. She discovered that while they were collectively disciplined, they were also individually curious about the species they were guarding. She started small conversations with the guards, asking innocent questions about Zephyrian culture and expressing admiration for their technological achievements. The guards, trained to gather information about human psychology, responded by sharing more than they probably should have from these conversations. Katie learned that the Zephyrians saw humans as slightly more unpredictable than most species, but still fundamentally logical beings who would respond to the right combination of pressure and incentives. They believed that human leaders could be bought with technology and that human populations could be controlled through their attachment to their families and communities. They think they understand us, Katie explained to her fellow prisoners. They believe we're just another species that can be cataloged and controlled. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we're pushed to our limits. The breakthrough came when Katie realized that the Zephyrians had a fundamental flaw in their thinking. They had studied human military tactics and psychology, but they had never encountered human creativity under extreme pressure. They understood how humans fought when they had hope, but they had no data on how humans behaved when they had nothing left to lose. We're going to show them something they've never seen before, Katie told her fellow prisoners. We're going to show them what happens when humans stop trying to survive and start trying to win. Katie's plan began 3 weeks after her arrival at the prison. She had spent that time carefully observing the Zephyrian guards and learning their routines, but more importantly, she had been building trust with every prisoner in the facility. The escape would only work if everyone participated, and that meant convincing people from different species and backgrounds to work together in ways the Zephyrians had never seen before. The first phase started during the morning meal distribution. Katie approached Guard Captain Thises, the senior Zephyrian officer who supervised the prison. Thises was tall even by Zephyrian standards, with darker blue skin and silver markings that indicated his rank. He had been studying the human prisoners for months, and Katie knew he considered himself an expert on human behavior. Captain Thises, Katie said respectfully, I have a request that might benefit both of us. Thises looked at her with the same patient expression he used with all prisoners. What is it, human Katie? I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about human military tactics being predictable. I believe you're right, but I think there might be some aspects of human strategy that your data doesn't fully capture. This got Tice's attention immediately. The Zephyrians were always eager to learn more about the species they planned to conquer. What aspects do you mean? Katie had practiced this conversation in her mind dozens of times. Well, your intelligence. About human combat focuses on our official military doctrines, but humans also have what we call improvised warfare. It's messy and illogical, but it can be effective in certain situations. Show me, Thises said, activating a recording device. Demonstrate these improvised tactics. Katie smiled inwardly. The Zephyrians were so focused on gathering information that they often missed the bigger picture. I would need to work with the other prisoners to show you properly. Human improvised warfare depends on group dynamics that can't be demonstrated by one person alone. Thises considered this request. Katie knew he was weighing the value of the information against the risk of allowing the prisoners to organize. After a moment, he nodded. You may organize training sessions, but they will be supervised and recorded. Of course, Katie agreed. I wouldn't want to do anything that might concern you. Over the next few days, Katie began holding what appeared to be military training sessions with her fellow prisoners. To the Zephyrian observers, it looked like she was teaching them human combat techniques and survival skills. In reality, She was coordinating the most complex escape plan ever attempted from a Zephyrian prison. The key was making everything look like normal human behavior while actually preparing for something the Zephyrians couldn't predict. Katie taught Alex how to pilot Zephyrian transport ships by disguising the lessons as discussions about human flight psychology. She showed Marcus how to improvise weapons from medical supplies while pretending to explain human field medicine. She worked with Lisa to develop intelligence-gathering techniques that looked like casual conversation training, but the most important part of the plan involved the non-human prisoners. Katie convinced the three Altarians to teach her about Zephyrian technology weaknesses, information they had learned during their species' conquest. She learned from the two Corvan warriors about Zephyrian combat limitations that even their own military forces didn't fully understand. Zephyrians are excellent at fighting enemies who behave logically, explained Corvan warrior Grax in his deep, growling voice. But they become confused when faced with tactics that serve no obvious strategic purpose. Katie realized this was the key to everything. The Zephyrians could counter any logical escape attempt, but they couldn't predict or stop something that appeared to be completely irrational. The breakthrough came when Katie discovered that the prison's security system had a fundamental flaw that the Zephyrians didn't even recognize. They had designed it to prevent escapes by logical beings who would try to find the most efficient way out, but they hadn't considered the possibility of prisoners who would deliberately choose the most dangerous and difficult route. "We're not going to sneak out," Katie explained to her fellow prisoners during one of their training sessions. "We're going to fight our way out, but we're going to do it in a way that makes no tactical sense to them." "That sounds like suicide," Alex said, though he was smiling as he said it. "It would be suicide if we were trying to survive," Katie replied. "But we're not trying to survive? We're trying to escape, and those are two completely different things." The plan Katie developed was brilliantly insane. Instead of trying to avoid the guards, they would attack them directly. Instead of trying to disable the security systems, they would use them to create chaos. Instead of trying to steal a ship, quietly, they would commandeer multiple vessels and make enough noise to alert every Zephyrian base in the system. "They'll think we've lost our minds," Lisa said when Katie explained the full plan. "Exactly," Katie said. "And while they're trying to figure out what we're doing, we'll be accomplishing our real objectives." The real objectives went far beyond simple escape. Katie had realized that the prison contained some of the most valuable intelligence assets in the galaxy. The Altarians knew Zephyrian technology secrets, the Corvans understood their military weaknesses, and the human prisoners represented the best strategic minds from multiple worlds. "We're not just breaking out," Katie told them. "We're taking everyone with us, including prisoners from other species. And we're taking Commander Veltar as our prisoner." The mention of Veltar sent a shock through the group. The Zephyrian commander had arrived at the prison the day before, apparently to observe the final phase of human behavioral testing before the invasion of Earth began. "Taking Veltar is impossible," Marcus said nervously. "He's got a full security detail and he's staying in the command center. It's impossible if we try to do it logically," Katie agreed. "But what if we do something so crazy that his security detail can't respond properly?" Katie's plan for capturing Veltar was the most audacious part of the entire escape. Instead of trying to sneak into the command center, they would walk in openly during the middle of the day. Instead of trying to overpower his guards, they would convince them to stand down. Instead of trying to escape with him secretly, they would announce their intentions to the entire prison. "The key is timing," Katie explained. "We start the escape during their shift change, when the guards are focused on routine procedures. We use the chaos from the other parts of the plan to create confusion. And we rely on the fact that they've never seen prisoners behave this way before." As the day of the escape approached, Katie felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She knew that if the plan failed, they would all likely be executed. But she also knew that if they succeeded, they would be in a position to strike a blow against the Zephyrian Empire that could change the course of the war. The night before the escape, Katie lay on her hard metal bunk and thought about Admiral Turner and the treaty he had signed. Soon, she would have a chance to prove that his betrayal had been the biggest mistake of his life. But more importantly, she would have a chance to save humanity from the same fate that had befallen 17 other species. Tomorrow, the Zephyrians would learn what happened when humans stopped trying to survive and started trying to win. The escape began at exactly 1400 hours during the guard shift change, just as Katie had planned. She walked calmly into the main corridor where Guard Captain Nices was reviewing his daily reports. Instead of trying to sneak past him, she approached him directly with a smile on her face. "Captain Nices, I have something very important to show you," Katie said in a friendly tone that made the Zephyrian look up from his work with curiosity. "What is it, human Katie?" he asked, setting down his datapad. "I've discovered something about human psychology that I think will fascinate you," Katie said. "It turns out that when humans are placed in impossible situations, we don't behave the way your psychological models predict." Vises activated his recording device immediately. "Explain this discovery." "Well," Katie said, still smiling, "when humans have nothing left to lose, we become completely unpredictable. For example, a logical person would never try to escape from a heavily guarded prison during the day when all the guards are awake and alert." Vises nodded, following her reasoning. "Yes, that would be irrational and certain to fail." "Exactly," Katie said, "which is why we're doing it right now." Before Vises could process what she had said, Alex appeared behind him and placed an improvised stunner against his neck. The device, built from medical equipment parts that Marcus had been secretly collecting, sent the Zephyrian into unconsciousness in seconds. Katie spoke into her hidden communicator. "Phase 1 complete. Begin chaos protocol." All around the prison, the carefully coordinated plan burst into action. Lisa and her team began sabotaging the communication systems, but not by destroying them. Instead, they flooded the channels with fake emergency reports that made it sound like the prison was under attack by an external force. Marcus and the Altarian prisoners started a controlled fire in the medical bay that triggered the automated emergency systems. The prison safety protocols began opening containment doors and activating evacuation procedures, creating exactly the kind of confusion Katie needed. The Corvan warriors, working with Alex's team, began attacking guard posts in the most direct and aggressive way possible. To the Zephyrian guards, it looked like the prisoners had somehow acquired weapons and gone completely insane. They called for reinforcements and activated lockdown procedures, but these responses only added to the chaos. Katie made her way toward the command center where Veltar was observing the human behavioral tests. She moved openly through corridors filled with confused guards who were trying to respond to multiple emergencies at once. When guards tried to stop her, she simply told them she was being evacuated to safety on orders from Captain Nices. The genius of the plan was that it relied on the Zephyrians' own systematic thinking to work against them. They had protocols for prison riots, escape attempts, external attacks, and medical emergencies. But they had no protocol for dealing with all of these things happening simultaneously in ways that made no logical sense. Katie reached the command center just as Veltar was demanding reports from his subordinates about the situation. She walked through the door as if she belonged there, and the guards barely glanced at her because they were focused on the chaos erupting throughout the facility. "Commander Veltar," Katie said loudly, causing every Zephyrian in the room to turn and stare at her. "I'm here to offer you a choice." Veltar's silver eyes widened with shock and then narrowed with anger. "Human Katie, you should not be here." "Guards, detain her immediately." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Katie said calmly. "You see, your entire prison is currently being taken over by a coordinated escape effort that your security systems can't handle. You have about 5 minutes before my people control every major system in this facility." "Impossible," Veltar said, but Katie could see uncertainty in his expression. "Your psychological models told you that humans would never attempt something this irrational," Katie continued. "But that's exactly why it's working. You planned for logical behavior, not for humans who have decided that dying free is better than living as prisoners." The communication system crackled to life with Lisa's voice. "Command center, this is prisoner control. We now have access to all security systems, transportation bays, and communication arrays. The prison is under our control. Veltar's face went pale. This is not possible. Our security systems are impenetrable. Only if you try to break them logically, Katie said. We didn't try to hack your systems. We convinced them to open for us by triggering your own emergency protocols. Alex's voice came through the communicator next. Katie, we've secured all transport ships and freed every prisoner in the facility. We're ready for Phase 2. Katie looked directly at Veltar. Here's your choice, Commander. You can come with us voluntarily as our prisoner, or you can stay. Hear and explain to your superiors how a handful of supposedly inferior humans took over your most secure facility. You cannot escape this system, Veltar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Our patrol ships will intercept you before you reach the edge of the system. Will they? Katie asked. Because from what I understand, your patrol ships are programmed to respond to specific threat patterns. They're not programmed to deal with a mixed fleet of stolen Zephyrian transports, broadcasting fake emergency signals while carrying prisoners from multiple species who all have intimate knowledge of your military weaknesses. Katie had spent weeks learning about Zephyrian psychology from the other prisoners, and she knew exactly what Veltar was thinking. He was calculating odds and trying to determine the logical response to an illogical situation. His training told him that prisoners couldn't possibly succeed at such an audacious plan, but the evidence in front of him suggested otherwise. Your people value order and predictability above everything else, Katie said. That's your strength when dealing with logical enemies, but it's your weakness when dealing with humans who have stopped trying to be logical. Marcus appeared in the doorway with several other prisoners, all carrying improvised weapons. Katie, we need to move. Our window is closing. Katie kept her eyes on Veltar. Last chance, Commander. Come with us and learn something about human nature that your books don't teach, or stay here and spend the rest of your career trying to explain how this happened. Veltar looked around at his subordinates, who were still trying to process reports of impossible events happening throughout the prison. Katie could see him weighing his options and realizing that his career was probably over regardless of what he chose. I will come with you, he said finally. But not as your prisoner, as your observer. I want to understand how you accomplish this, Katie smiled. Even better. You're about to get a first-hand education in what humans can do when they decide to stop following the rules. As they made their way to the transport ships, Katie felt a surge of pride in what her people had accomplished. They had done something that 17 other species had failed to do. They had beaten the Zephyrians at their own game by refusing to play by the established rules, but she also knew that this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be turning their small victory into something that could save humanity and all the other enslaved species. The Zephyrian Empire controlled thousands of worlds and had military forces beyond counting. However, Katie now had something the Empire had never faced before. A multi-species army led by humans who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to do something so crazy that your enemies couldn't predict or counter it. The war for galactic freedom was about to begin. 6 months after the prison break, Katie stood on the bridge of the Liberation Fleet flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the view screen. Her fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Ships from 17 different species, flying together under human leadership, all of them former prisoners or survivors of Zephyrian conquest. What had started as a desperate escape had become the most effective military force in known space. Commander Veltar stood beside her, no longer a prisoner but not quite an ally either. His presence on the bridge had been controversial among Katie's officers, but she had insisted on keeping him close. Over the months, he had become something unprecedented in Zephyrian history, a bridge between two completely different ways of thinking about warfare and leadership. The Zephyrian attack fleet is already in position around Earth, Veltar said, studying the tactical display. 300 ships arranged in perfect formation, following the standard conquest protocol. They expect minimal resistance from the human defense forces. Katie smiled grimly. They're about to learn that Humans don't fight the way their textbooks say we should. The communication system activated and Admiral Turner's voice filled the bridge. Unknown fleet. This is Admiral Turner of the Earth Defense Force. Identify yourselves immediately. Katie activated the response channel. Hello, Admiral Turner. This is Lieutenant Commander Katie Morgan, the officer you had stunned and arrested for trying to warn you about the Zephyrians. I'm returning with some friends who would like to discuss your treaty. The silence that followed lasted almost 30 seconds. When Turner finally spoke again, his voice was shaky. Morgan, how is that possible? You were taken by the Zephyrians months ago? I was, Katie said. And I learned some very interesting things while I was their guest. For instance, did you know that those trading posts you allowed them to build are actually military bases designed to control human space? That's impossible, Turner said, but Katie could hear the doubt in his voice. The Zephyrians are allies. They've provided us with advanced technology and protection. Admiral, look at your sensors, Katie said. Do those 300 ships surrounding Earth look like protection to you, or do they look like an invasion force? Katie knew that Turner was checking his displays and finally seeing what she had tried to warn him about months ago. The Zephyrian ships were positioned in a perfect siege formation around Earth, with weapons powered and shields raised. There was no way to interpret their positioning as anything other than hostile. My God, Turner whispered. What have we done? You made a mistake, Katie said simply. But it's not too late to fix it. Stand down your forces and let my fleet handle this. Your fleet? Turner asked. Morgan, what exactly are you commanding out there? Katie looked around her bridge at the mixed crew of humans, Altarians, Corvins, and other species working together, with an efficiency that would have been impossible under traditional military doctrine. I'm commanding the Liberation Fleet, Admiral. Representatives from every species the Zephyrians have conquered, all working together to end their empire. The Zephyrian attack began exactly as their tactical manuals prescribed. The 300 ships moved into bombardment formation, targeting Earth's major cities and military installations. Their commander, General Kestar, broadcast the standard surrender demand that had worked on 17 other worlds. People of Earth, the Zephyrian general announced, your leaders have broken the terms of our treaty by harboring enemies of the Empire. Surrender immediately, and your transition to Imperial rule will be swift and peaceful. Katie opened the channel to the entire system. General Kestar, this is Katie Morgan of the Liberation Fleet. I have a counteroffer for you. You have no authority to negotiate, human, Kestar replied. Surrender your stolen ships, and we may show mercy. I'm not here to surrender, Katie said. I'm here to give you the same choice I gave Commander Veltar. You can surrender to us, or you can try to fight a battle using tactics that won't work against an enemy you don't understand. Kestar's response was to order his fleet to open fire on the Liberation Fleet. It was exactly what Katie had expected. The Zephyrians were so committed to their systematic approach that they couldn't adapt when faced with something completely outside their experience. The battle that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. Katie's fleet didn't fight like any military force the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Instead of maintaining formation and exchanging fire in predictable patterns, her ships moved in chaotic swarms that made it impossible for the Zephyrian computers to calculate firing solutions. The key was that Katie's fleet wasn't trying to win a traditional space battle. They were trying to demonstrate that the Zephyrian way of warfare was obsolete. Ships from different species worked together in ways that violated every known tactical principle, but somehow achieved results that conventional tactics couldn't. The turning point came when Katie implemented the strategy she had been planning for months. Instead of trying to destroy the Zephyrian fleet, she surrounded it. Her ships moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually designed to create a psychological effect rather than a military one. General Kestar, Katie broadcast to the entire Zephyrian fleet. You're surrounded by ships crewed by representatives of every species you've conquered. They're all here because they believe that freedom was worth fighting for, even when victory seemed impossible. Katie paused. knowing that her words were being heard not just by the Zephyrian commanders but by every crew member in their fleet. I'm offering the same choice to your crews that I offered to Commander Veltar. Join us in building something better than an empire based on conquest, or continue following orders that will only lead to more suffering. The response was immediate and unprecedented. Ships throughout the Zephyrian fleet began broadcasting surrender signals, not to the Liberation fleet but to their own commanders. Crews that had spent years following orders without question suddenly found themselves unable to continue supporting a system that they had never really examined. Veltar stepped forward on Katie's bridge. General Kestar, this is Commander Veltar. I have observed these humans for months, and I can tell you that they represent something our empire has never encountered. They don't fight to conquer, they fight to liberate. There is a difference, and it matters. Within hours, the most powerful invasion fleet in Zephyrian history had transformed into the newest addition to Katie's liberation fleet. General Kestar himself requested a meeting with Katie to discuss terms for a permanent ceasefire. Admiral Turner watched in amazement as Katie coordinated the peaceful integration of former enemies into her growing alliance. Morgan, he said over a private channel, I owe you an apology that I can never fully make. You don't owe me anything, Admiral, Katie replied. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. The important thing is that we learn from our mistakes. What happens now? Turner asked. Katie looked out at the mixed fleet that surrounded Earth, ships from dozens of species working together to build something that had never existed before. Now we finish what we started. There are still millions of enslaved beings throughout the galaxy who need to know that freedom is possible. Veltar approached her with a datapad containing intelligence about Zephyrian military positions throughout the galaxy. The Empire's strength was based on the belief that resistance was futile, he said. You have proven that belief wrong. When word of this victory spreads, other enslaved worlds will rise up. Katie nodded, understanding the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. She had started as a junior officer trying to warn her superiors about a threat they couldn't see. Now she was the leader of a galactic revolution that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. Admiral Turner, she said, Earth is safe, but our work is just beginning. The galaxy is full of people who need to learn that freedom is always worth fighting for, no matter how impossible victory might seem. As the Liberation Fleet prepared to depart for its next mission, Katie reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been dropped by her own people for trying to protect them, but she had returned leading an army of liberation that represented the best of what different species could accomplish when they worked together. The war for galactic freedom was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, enslaved worlds throughout the galaxy had reason to hope.